4th of July weekend. My own son-in-law leaned over his bourbon and said, "He's too old to know what's his anymore." By Monday morning, I had lost $2.4 million, access to my own home, and almost the ability to walk. I'm Charles Whitmore, 72, retired federal litigation counsel, and what they didn't realize was I still remembered every clause I ever wrote. If you've ever been blindsided by your own blood, drop your city in the comments and subscribe if you want to see how I turned a push off a dock into a federal case. Looking back now, I didn't miss the signs. I just excused them, because that's what you do for family. After 40 years of practicing law, I retired with a reputation for iron discipline and a clean record. No scandals, no debt, no enemies who lived to tell the story. I was careful in everything, especially when it came to planning my estate. I didn't want my daughter, Sophie, or her husband, Matt, fighting over money after I was gone, so I made it simple: a trust, a healthcare directive, a clear power of attorney. I handed Sophie medical authority. She was my only child. Matt, her husband, got co-trustee status on one investment account. It was supposed to be temporary, just a formality, while I recovered from minor surgery. That was 5 years ago. At first, they were grateful. At least, they acted like it. When Sophie wanted to leave her job at the nonprofit to focus on wellness, I covered their bills. When IVF failed the first time, I paid for the second round without blinking. When Matt wanted to scale his financial consulting business, I funded the launch. They never asked outright. That would have required humility. Instead, they hinted, praised me at holidays. Matt would raise a glass and toast to the man who made all this possible. Funny how flattery smells a lot like chloroform when you've seen both up close. Meanwhile, I lived modestly. My Lakehouse wasn't a vanity project. It was my escape. I didn't collect Rolexes. I didn't drive a McLaren. I donated, quietly, sponsored a veteran scholarship fund, wrote policy memos for pro bono clinics in Deutsche, and every time they wanted more, I gave. Because I thought that was love. Because I didn't want to die alone. Holidays were the worst. Thanksgiving dinners, where I cooked and cleaned while they posted reels from the dock. Father's Day, when Matt bought me a mug that read, "Old Guy, New Tricks." I still have it. Never used it once. The truth is, I was never family. I was the bank, and banks don't get invited to brunch. Looking back now, I don't think they ever saw me as a person. I was an institution to them, a vault with a beating heart. I'd spent 4 decades building my reputation, federal litigation counsel, partner track at 39, and never once sued or sanctioned. My job was to outthink predators, to spot bad actors before they got through the door. That was the irony, wasn't it? I never thought the ones sitting at my dinner table were the ones I should have been watching. Sophie was always bright, always articulate. Her mother and I poured everything into her. Private school, Stanford undergrad, NYU for grad school. Every tuition bill, I paid it in full before the due date. Matt came into the picture 10 years ago. Financial advisor, slick speaker, 0 real clients, but full of ideas, always pitching something. He called me Sir for the first 6 months, until I let him co-manage the Tahoe property taxes. After that, he called me Charlie. I hated it. Still, I played along. Holidays, birthdays, Mother's Day brunch. I paid. They posed every year. They'd arrive at the Lakehouse with monogrammed towels and $300 bottle openers they couldn't afford, but insisted were gifts. Meanwhile, the roof was leaking, and I was footing the bills quietly. I didn't mind at first. I had more than enough. Tesla stock alone was doing most of the heavy lifting. Add in my retirement account, the yacht fund, and the mineral rights on a New Mexico plot I inherited. I was sitting on just under 12.6 million, liquid and non. But Matt started poking around. What's the point of holding it all if no one gets to enjoy it, he'd say. You can't take it with you. Charlie. One night, he even joked, honestly, if you ever went under, we'd probably keep the machine off. More efficient. Sophie laughed. I didn't, and yet I still gave. Paid off their second mortgage when their crypto investment tanked. Covered Sophie's naturopathic treatments, $900 a week for lavender enemas and frequency tuning. When I asked for help with the books, they were always too busy. When I invited them to stay an extra day, flights already booked. I was useful. Until I wasn't. I missed out on my 50th law school reunion because Sophie said she needed emotional support during a full moon. They didn't come to my best friend's funeral, said the drive was too far. Every time I brought up estate planning, Sophie changed the subject. We trust you. Dad, we're not greedy. You know what's best, except they didn't trust me. And they were greedy. I was the only one who didn't see it yet. They kept me isolated, framed it as protection. You don't need to worry about bills anymore. Let us handle things. What they really meant was, sit down, sign here, shut up. At the time, I thought they were looking out for me. Now I know they were laying the groundwork. It started with a ping on my phone, a chase alert, 9:14 p.m. Withdrawal limit updated to 200,000. I didn't request that. My first instinct wasn't fear. It was irritation. I assumed it was a glitch, or maybe Matt toggling something while helping with taxes. He always had my login for convenience. I texted him, "Did you change my Chase settings?" No reply. An hour later, a second alert wire transfer pending. 5 figures. Flagged. Now I was paying attention. I called the bank. The rep was polite, but firm. Whitmore. Do you recall authorizing a transfer to Phoenix Keystone Ventures, LLC? I didn't. They paused. It was submitted from your device profile. IP address shows as Reno. Nevada. Reno. I hadn't been in Nevada since the bar exam. The next morning, I pulled up the security footage from the Tahoe property. My systems all wired. Ring at every door. Synced to cloud storage. There he was. Matt. Entering the guest house at 11:07 p.m. the night prior. Alone. He had the key I'd hidden in the lantern by the stairs. Only Sophie and I knew where it was. He walked straight to the study. Stayed for exactly 17 minutes. Left carrying a folder. He looked calm, like he'd done it before. My hands went cold. That folder, it wasn't just paper. It held trust documents, account summaries, old POAs, everything I thought was under lock and key. And I realized it wasn't the first time he'd been in there. I spent the next 2 days pulling statements, logging every login, every transfer. I built my own spreadsheet like I used to do prepping for federal testimony. The numbers didn't lie. 14 months, 240,000, 780 siphoned, a few hundred here, a few thousand there, all labeled advisory or Missy Disby. It wasn't just Chase. My Fidelity account showed matching activity liquidations, reallocation orders I hadn't approved. Half of it routed through a shell LLC in Nevada. And that wasn't the worst part. Buried in a scanned PDF dated 6 months ago was an updated medical directive. It claimed I had early-stage cognitive decline, that I was frequently disoriented, prone to memory lapses, and no longer capable of making independent financial decisions. Signed by a Dr. K. Preston, licensed in California. Except there's no Dr. Preston listed on any state registry. The address was a UPS drop box in Fresno. I called the notary, listed on the form. She picked up on the 3rd ring. "Hi." "Yes," she said cheerfully. "I did notarize that form for a Matthew Jensen. He said it was for his father-in-law's care planning." I asked if she verified identity. He showed me a driver's license copy, and the man was on Zoom. He looked older, didn't say much. That older man was not me. They used a stand-in deep fake, maybe. Or someone from the VA nursing home down the street. Either way, it was fraud. And it was coordinated. Sophie. My daughter, the girl I took to her first piano recital, who I held when she broke her arm in 7th grade. She'd signed off on all of it. They didn't just steal my money. They tried to steal my mind. People talk about betrayal as a slow burn. But for me, it was one sharp break, a single afternoon, when the whole truth hit with blinding clarity. It happened on a Sunday at the Lakehouse. They called it a family reset, invited me out to clear the air. Matt even grilled steaks, played host. Sophie opened a bottle of wine and poured me a glass, her hand a little shaky. I remember thinking how normal it all looked, but how little it felt like family. That whole weekend, I moved carefully, pretending not to know what I knew. I watched Matt on his phone. Fielding calls, he said, were clients. I listened as Sophie talked about future plans, using phrases like, "Once things are settled," or "When you don't need to worry anymore." I let them think I was oblivious. The air that day was thick with pine sap and grilling smoke. It stuck to my skin. Every detail was sharp, the smell of sunscreen, the hiss of the grill, the legal paper stacked by the porch, half hidden under an outdoor cushion. I kept catching Matt glancing at the stack. After lunch, Matt offered to help me to the dock, a gesture that felt practiced. I almost said no, but I wanted to see how far he'd go. I walked beside him, cane in one hand, heart hammering. At the water's edge, he handed me my sunglasses, flashing that salesman smile. "Don't want you missing the fireworks. Charles?" He tossed them high and wide, like I was some old retriever he could order around. Instinct made me reach. That's when I felt the shove, hard, straight between my shoulder blades. Suddenly, there was nothing beneath me but sun, air, and the dull shock of impact. My lower back slammed the concrete foundation. Pain shot up my spine, stole my breath. For a second, all I saw was blue sky and Matt's shape looming above, blocking the sun. I tried to move, but my legs felt heavy, foreign. I heard Sophie's voice, thin, panicked, not running to help, but whispering, "We can't call an ambulance. They'll find out." The realization landed with brutal clarity. It was never about care. It was containment. They needed me silent and out of the way. The memory loss, the forged directives, the money siphoned month by month, now a body that couldn't testify. I forced myself to focus. The legal paper, Matt hid by the porch, a new trust amendment. unsigned. His plan was almost complete. All he needed was my mark, my signature, or a facsimile, in the chaos. My neighbor retired. Navy, sharper than most, heard the thud. He was the only one who moved. He called 911 while Sophie begged him not to, saying, "It's just a fall. Please. He's fine." But I wasn't fine. I couldn't feel my right foot. My fingers tingled. Everything inside me screamed. But I kept my mouth shut. There was no point in pleading with people who saw me as a problem to be solved. Paramedics arrived. Voices crisp, asking questions. Matt couldn't answer. How long was I unconscious? What medications was I on? Why had no one called for help sooner? Sophie stammered. Matt tried to spin it as an accident, a misunderstanding. But the medics weren't buying it. As they strapped me to a backboard, I caught a glimpse of that envelope on the porch, the legal documents. For a split second, all the breadcrumbs snapped into place. The medical directive. The trust changes. The forgotten withdrawals. The sudden interest in my health. The pressure to sign things when I was tired. The staged concern, always when witnesses were around. It was never incompetence. It was conspiracy. As the ambulance doors closed, I realized this wasn't just a family squabble. It was a hostile takeover. And I was done playing the mark. The first night in the hospital, I couldn't move my legs, but my mind never felt sharper. The pain was blinding, but it burned away any illusion I had left. For the first time in years, I stopped wondering why and started asking, how do I fight back? I made a silent promise. If I survived this, I'd never be a mark again. Doctors ran their tests, MRIs, blood work, neurological assessments. That's when the second fracture hit evidence of previously healed injuries, the radiologist said, pointing at old scars on my ribs and wrist. He asked if I'd fallen before. I just shook my head. I knew what he was seeing, decades of family roughhousing that was never innocent. When the hospital's social worker came by, I told her everything. I didn't soften it or try to make anyone look better than they were. She took notes, her face set in professional concern. She asked about the documents. I handed her my phone with the ring footage, my spreadsheets, the fake medical directive. She didn't flinch. "We're required to report this. You did the right thing." That phrase echoed. For once, I was believed. As the investigation spun up, I started to assemble my team quietly, methodically. First, I called Mark Evans, a friend from the old days. He's the kind of elder law attorney who doesn't blink when million-dollar trusts are at stake. Mark was furious when he heard the story, and even angrier when I showed him the evidence. He brought in a forensic accountant. Every transfer, every forged signature, every Zelle memo tracked, logged, and matched to Matt's phone records. They even found a second shell company registered in Sophie's maiden name. This wasn't just greed. It was premeditated fraud. My lawyer filed a restraining order within 24 hours. The judge granted it without hesitation. By the next morning, Mark had drafted an emergency petition to freeze all accounts tied to my trust, including the Lake Tahoe estate, the brokerage funds, and the remaining Tesla shares. We filed in both California probate court and federal court. The orders hit Matt and Sophie like a brick. Suddenly, their cards were declined. The family Benz leased in my name was repossessed right in front of their house. The boat club membership gone. Meanwhile, I sent a brief to my old contacts in the HOA and local business community. Not a rant, just the facts: elder abuse, financial exploitation, pending charges. I knew the rumor mill would do the rest. Matt tried to spin it online, posted that I was unstable, confused, and making wild allegations. But I uploaded a silent video, the ring footage. Matt in my study, pocketing documents, no commentary, no drama. Let the evidence speak. The reaction was swift and public. Their friends stopped calling. The charity boards Sophie sat on quietly asked her to step back. Even my old law partners, men who never missed a chance to gossip, texted, "We're with you. Charles, tell us if you need anything." Every move I made was deliberate. No anger, no public fights, just paperwork and quiet, unstoppable force. I transferred the remainder of my liquid assets into a newly structured trust, naming a longtime paralegal as interim co-trustee. I left nothing to chance, every document notarized, every login secured. All the while, my rehab team pushed me harder. "You're making progress," they said. "Don't give up." And I didn't. Every new milestone, wiggling a toe, sitting upright, even just brushing my own teeth felt like a small win. Each step was mine, earned, untainted by anyone else's agenda. The best part, when Matt's lawyer called, he sounded panicked. "We'd like to settle," he said, quietly, if possible. For the first time, I let myself laugh. "No, thank you. I'll see you in court." Court didn't look like TV. No shouting, no grand speeches, just files, signatures, and a judge who had seen too many cases like mine. Matt and Sophie sat side by side, faces tight, eyes down. Their attorney tried to paint me as confused, but the evidence spoke for itself. Ring footage, forged documents, and my clean medical records from a dozen independent specialists. The judge's ruling was swift. All accounts frozen. All assets under emergency protection. Sophie's medical power of attorney revoked. Matt's co-trustee status terminated. They were barred from setting foot on the Lake Tahoe property, pending further review. But the fallout didn't stop at court. The local news ran a piece, "Retired attorney exposes family financial abuse." My inbox filled with messages, strangers and old friends, neighbors, even former rivals. Some offered support. Others shared their own stories. Pain that echoed mine. Matt lost his securities license within a week. Sophie's name vanished from every board she'd ever joined. Their circle closed overnight. Even their closest friends couldn't stomach what they'd done. Sophie called once. She wanted to apologize, or maybe to bargain. Her voice trembled as she asked for another chance. I listened. I didn't yell. I told her, quietly and without hate. Boundaries aren't punishment. They're protection. I wish you healing, but I can't let you back in. I hung up, feeling lighter. No more fear, no more guilt. Just space to breathe. When the keys to the Lakehouse arrived by courier untouched, unsigned, I placed them in a drawer and let the silence settle. The place felt empty, but for the first time, that emptiness meant freedom, not loss. 6 months have passed since the court ruling. Life is quieter now, and in its own way, more vibrant. There are mornings when I still expect some fresh crisis, an urgent call, a bank alert, a lawyer's letter, but none come. Instead, there's just the sun pouring in through the kitchen windows and the smell of strong coffee. My physical recovery is a slow climb, but every milestone feels like a personal victory. I walk with a cane these days. Some mornings, my back aches so much I can barely stand, but I stand anyway. I practice gratitude sometimes, just for the simple act of getting dressed without help. Each step is my own. No one else gets to claim it. The Lakehouse is different now. Without Sophie and Matt, the silence is peaceful, not ominous. I spend my days reading on the porch, watching the water, sometimes fishing with neighbors who became real friends in the aftermath. Funny how you can live next to someone for a decade and only really meet them when your world falls apart. There's a monthly poker night now, 6 of us, all retired, all with stories. None of us talk much about what brought us here, but there's an understanding in the room that didn't exist before. When I win, I always buy the pizza. It's a small ritual, but it matters. My lawyer, Mark, checks in often sometimes with a new case. Sometimes just to see how I'm holding up. The rehab staff sends me cards on holidays, rooting for every small step forward. My old law partners, who once only called for deals or gossip, now call to talk baseball or to tell me about their grandkids. The circle is smaller, but stronger. And sometimes, in the quiet, I think about Sophie. I miss the daughter. I thought I had the little girl who used to climb into my lap, who once called me her hero. Grief lingers, but it doesn't define me. I know now that setting boundaries isn't cruelty. It's self-respect. If she ever truly changes, the door isn't locked, but it won't swing wide for apologies alone. As for Matt, I heard through the grapevine he's working manual labor at the marina, cleaning boats. Poetic. Really, sometimes you need to lose everything to see who you've become. A year ago, I would have done anything to keep the peace. Now, I know peace is something you build, not something you bargain for. I've joined an elder advocacy group, sharing my story with others who never thought it could happen to them. If even one person listens, recognizes the warning signs, or finds courage to speak up, it's worth it. Most days, I feel something I thought I'd lost forever. Hope. Not the blind hope that family will always do right by you, but the hope that comes from surviving, from rebuilding, from choosing who you let into your life. My world is smaller, but my sense of self is bigger. I choose my circle now. I choose who gets my time, my trust, my love. Blood may tie us, but boundaries keep us whole. So, if you've made it this far, let me ask, would you have pressed charges? Would you have walked away or held on out of obligation? Drop your answer in the comments. And if my story helped you, if it made you feel seen or less alone, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because sometimes surviving is just the start. The real victory is claiming your story and building a life where your truth matters, no matter who tries to silence it.